Despite success in Hollywood, Spider-Man hasn't seen as much glory in his games. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions didn't necessarily get its fair shake, seriously it's a great game, but just about every Spider-Man game after has ranged from average to garbage. The Amazing Spider-Man hovered pretty closely to the average range by not really being great at any one thing but web swinging. Sequels tend to improve most aspects of a franchise, which opens the door for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to lift the series past mediocrity. But does The Amazing Spider-Man 2 swing a little more closely to its amazing namesake? Let's find out in this review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Now who's the thief, huh?
Like I said earlier, the first Amazing Spider-Man did one thing really well: web swinging. There was just something about flying through the New York skyscrapers that made traversal such a joy, despite the city feeling quite dead. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 carries this feeling over nicely with only a few changes. Webs now actually need to connect to objects other than the clouds, meaning you need to be more strategic when you navigate. It's a slight hassle when you can't connect and you slam right into a building, but it's only a minor misstep if anything. Swinging is the best part of the game, but that can sound like a backhanded compliment given how mediocre or bad everything else is. Stealthy sections let Spider-Man sneak around and eliminate enemies, but it doesn't ever move past the basic action of getting behind a guy and pressing the takedown button. Spider-Man's ability to crawl on ceilings and walls feels like he was designed for this sort of gameplay, so seeing this facet of the game never evolve past the most basic premise is disappointing. Combat is similarly structured. It apes the counter and strike mechanics used so perfectly in the Arkham games, but again, it doesn't go past the basic punch a dude and don't get punched mentality. Like sneaking, Spider-Man's ability to sense incoming fists and the ability to zip over large distances to hit thugs makes him more naturally engineered for this exact kind of action. Spider-Man feels like the only other hero that could have the potential to go toe-to-toe with Batman, but he lacks the rhythm, precision, and depth. Fighting works on a mechanical level and has been slightly improved over the last entry, but seeing it squander most of its potential by not being spectacular is disheartening. The same could be said about the story, but its fumbled storytelling does a better job at tempering your expectations beforehand. Spider-Man, or Peter Parker since he is playable this time, is after Uncle Ben's killer. Soft leads send him from place to place before the story grows into something a little bigger. Bigger is not better though. Intriguing threads show promise but are quickly batted away because everything else surrounding the very core of the narrative is shaky. Seeing how games look now in 2014 sets a certain standard for writing, delivery, and animation, all of which mix together to potentially form a great cutscene. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is stuck in the past for all intents and purposes, which makes the whole narrative presentation feel right at home in a PS2 game. Characters are rather static, and since everything, besides Spider-Man himself, looks flat and animates like a mannequin, it gets hard to pay attention to something so primal, even if the writing isn't cringeworthy. It's basically the opposite problem that Beyond Two Souls had. New York doesn't look too sharp either. I've only been to the Big Apple once in my life, but I don't remember it looking this bland. It's about as uninteresting of a city you can get, since it is anything but lively with its gray and brown color palette. Manhattan tries to spice itself up though with its menace system, but such a gesture is like extending an olive branch covered in spiders and lava. At any arbitrary moment, the game will decide that Spider-Man is a criminal and send hostile robots and sentries to attack. To keep them at bay, you have to do incredibly menial tasks like rescuing civilians from burning buildings or disposing of a bomb to raise your quote-unquote heroic level. Difficulty is sporadic with each tedious task, and when you fail one, you actually get punished by getting yet another tick on your menace side of the morality bar. The fact that this idiotic system never stops filling up, even in the post-game, breaks any notion of flow the game never really establishes in the first place. Even gathering the comic book collectibles, one of the game's purest forms of joy, is truncated by this repulsive, superfluous system. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a step backwards for the Spider-Man. The previous entry was a proof of concept that showed maybe, just maybe, that the series could somewhat be in the same vicinity of the incredibly successful Batman Arkham titles. With every aspect of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 stagnating or devolving further into a poor mimicry of other games, Peter Parker's footsteps behind Bruce Wayne are starting to go the opposite way. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets a 5 out of 10. Thanks guys for watching, and goodbye.
Now, excuse me. I have funds to raise.
Yeah, I've got important things to do too.